The LA Clippers finally secured their first win in back-to-back situations, getting 2 wins, one against Detroit and another against Toronto. It was Norman Powell's homecoming game in front of Toronto fans for the first time since he had been traded to Portland by that franchise. And oh boy, find out why he helped be the catalyst and lead the Clippers to a big win in one of the best performances of the season on today's Locked On Clippers.
Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, in my 18th season as a Clipper fan. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. And of course, subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, where basketball content has resumed. And I did go live after this Raptors game on Tuesday night. You can also subscribe to Locked On Clippers on YouTube and leave us a review on all your favorite podcasting platforms and comment on today's pinned question. Who was your player of the game in this one? For me, it was Norman Powell, and I'm going to talk about why he was the catalyst in leading the Clippers to one of their best performances of the season, a 124-113 win in the six to beat the Raptors, who are struggling of late, but they are a decent team with very good players, and it's never an easy win going there. That alongside a big performance from, he's back, ladies and gentlemen, Ivica Zubac, because that was not Zubac, that was Zubac in the second half. He was absolutely everywhere, taking advantage of the fact that Toronto had no center. And then I'm going to talk about the rest of the guys, how the performance went. You already know the deal. So let's get right into it. Clippers against the Raptors. No John Wall sitting on the second half of a back-to-back, but Kawhi Leonard was activated in the second half of a back-to-back, having sat out against Detroit. Now, I'm very happy the organization made that decision because Kawhi Leonard, as I mentioned in the last episode, he should be playing against the better team in Toronto. And the fans of Toronto not only have a connection with Kawhi from that championship, but they're paying a lot of money for those tickets. And I always, as a fan of the game, I'm always trying to be considerate of the fans because I always think the fans are the most important, truly. They're the ones that pay their hard-earned money to go watch a group of grown men because they care so much about the name on the front of the jersey, year in, year out. So I got respect for all the Raptors fans, everybody out there. But this game was interesting because immediately what stuck out to me was the Raptors' length. You know, the Raptors are one of those teams alongside the Clippers that are really trying to build their roster on these 6'7" to 6'9" wing players. You know, you got Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, Chris Boucher, Precious Achiuwa when he's healthy, Otto Porter, who has not been healthy this season. He's, I think it's a toe or a foot injury that he has. But you saw immediately OG Anunoby was doing a good job on Kawhi Leonard. He was doing a good job getting over screens. And his length, it definitely bothers guys, including Kawhi Leonard. And obviously, OG Anunoby definitely knows a little thing or two about Kawhi, having been that they played together in that 2019 season. And I want to say a couple weeks ago, I was listening to an interview with OG Anunoby, and he said how he was picking up stuff from Kawhi when he was with the Raptors, and a guy that he could look up to as a 6'7" wing player that got drafted to a pretty good organization and wants to slowly ascend year by year, and he's doing that. OG Anunoby having the best season of his career, and you could really see the work he's put in. He was hitting his jump shot in the game on Tuesday night, playing good defense. He had 18 points and 5 rebounds on 5 for 9 shooting and 2 for 3 from deep. But he also played 44 minutes in a game in which Toronto lost by 11. So I thought that was fairly peculiar by Nick Nurse. I think he's overworking a lot of his players. And if you listen to my own podcast, Dime Dropper, I've said since before the season even began that I think Toronto's issue for the second consecutive season is a lack of depth. I don't know how long those starters, the Van Vliets, the Siakams, the Gary Trents, the Scotty Barnes, can play at a high level and stay healthy. Because when one of those guys is missing, it's a huge loss for the team. They don't necessarily have the depth like the Clippers do to overcome those deficits. But first quarter, very even, 29-27. Thought the Clippers and Raptors both started out pretty good defensively. You know that when the Clippers have Kawhi out there, Kawhi Sr. and Paul George in that starting lineup are going to switch, and then Zubac is going to be in his drop coverage. But when Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Marcus Morris are being put in pick and roll with Zubac, they do such a better job with their length getting over screens that it's very hard for teams to gain advantages. And that's what makes the Clipper defense top 5 in the league, is those wing players mixed with Ivica Zubac's great defense and drop coverage has really been a recipe for success this season. And when the Clippers lean to more wing-heavy lineups like you saw in this game, everything changes. And Kawhi Leonard, I really admired about him that he was guarding Pascal Siakam to start the game. You know, Paul George took his crack at Pascal, Nico, various guys did. But Kawhi Leonard to start the game guarding Pascal Siakam, the best player on the other team, who's having a career year, averaging 26, 8, and 7 or something, like LeBron James-like numbers. And he's guarding the best player in the first quarter, because we're used to seeing Kawhi Leonard guard the best player in the fourth quarter. If he's starting out the game like that, to me, it sets a totally different tone. And I'm very, very proud of Kawhi Leonard to go out there, put in that effort, and lead by example. I think there's no better form of leadership than the hard work on the defensive end. That goes for any era of hoops. If you show as the best player on the team that you're willing to bust your butt on the defensive end, it is a domino effect for the rest of your team. And Kawhi Leonard, even though OG Anunoby did a good job on him in this game, Pascal Siakam did a good job on his game, held him to an under 50% shooting night, he still impacted the game in many ways with his rebounding, with his passing, and with his defense. And the Clippers trailed 27-29 after one, despite 2 threes from each Marcus Morris Sr. and Paul George. Paul George, I thought, got off to a really good start in the first half. 16 points for him in the first half of play, and he was just hitting his jumper, being aggressive, knocking down shots. Just a good shooting night for Paul George, and that's reflected by his 9 for 18 shooting and 5 for 9 from deep. Only thing I didn't like, he didn't get to the line once after his 14 free throw attempt game against Detroit, but when the Clippers win by double digits, I ain't going to complain. 23 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists on 9 of 18 shooting in 35 minutes for Paul George. A really solid night at the office. And in the second quarter and the third quarter, especially the third quarter, is when the Clippers really started to create separation. Second quarter, the Clippers outscored the Raptors 33-27. And again, no Robert Covington. Another DNP. Even with Kawhi playing, the Clippers still went with 9 deep. Just Kennard, Terrence, Norman with the 3. Kennard, Terrence, Norman, and then Nico Batum. And again, great players. All those guys are fantastic. All those guys did their thing. I would like to see Robert Covington step into this situation. But what you're seeing now is Ty Lue is staggering Kawhi and Paul George. And that's what you're going to see in the playoffs. I've been saying that for weeks. That in slowly but surely, as he prepares for the long haul, he's going to start staggering Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, which is normal. Keep one in while the other's on the bench. So we always have a star in the game. And it works out well because they both can handle the ball and pick and roll. Now, you know whose value that really hurts is John Wall. Because John Wall takes the ball out of their hands. Now, I do think that John Wall can oftentimes make life easier for Paul George or Kawhi, no doubt about it, especially when he's out there with only one of them at a time in the stagger situation. The only thing I don't like is when John Wall's being put out there with other guards in which teams are going to switch everything and force him to go one-on-one because he's the one with the most creation juice off the bounce. Although you can really say Norman Powell has put himself number one in that conversation of any Clipper bench player in terms of scoring. And in this game, he was phenomenal. He got a nice video tribute from the Toronto organization, and I want to give a shout out to the Raptors organization. That was beautifully done. Norm said that he didn't cry, but his eyes looked watery on that bench. I was like, wow, this is emotional. The crowd gave him a nice standing ovation. I think they got, when they don't price their fans out of seats, one of the best fan bases in the league over there. And like when you go back and watch those Raptors playoff games from 2019, the atmosphere and honestly, before last season, the atmosphere of Raptors playoff games were just so great to watch on TV. Be nice to make it out there one time. But Norman Powell has plenty of experience in Raptors playoff games. He was such an integral part, one of the big 8 players alongside Kawhi, Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, Siakam, Danny Green, and Fred VanVleet that won them that 2019 title. And Kyle Lowry, of course. How could I forget? And he earned every bit of that video tribute, 5.5 years. But the thing about it is, I think he was a little bit hurt by being traded to Portland. And he played with fire. Like, he played with such intensity. He was trying to go to the rim every chance he got. He was dunking when he had the chance and screaming and letting out some emotion after it. he played with a different sort of mentality in this one, and it was very apparent from the screen. All game he continued it, including the third quarter in which the Clippers outscored the Raptors 37-26. And it's funny because the third quarters at times have been an issue for the Clippers, including in the Detroit game, but they're the ones that took it to Toronto in the third quarter of this one. And I saw a lot of Raptors fans on my Twitter timeline, which I follow a lot of them, and they were saying that third quarters have been a problem for them. And I think Toronto, at times, their offense can look really clunky because what I think they have is a lack of shooting for sure. Last I checked, they were the second worst or third worst three-point shooting team in the league behind like the Lakers and Charlotte or something. And Toronto, they've had this problem for like 2 years now. Last year was the same issue that they couldn't shoot the ball from the outside compared to other teams in the league. And like guys like Scotty Barnes, jumpers are not that great. He's still a work in progress. Pascal Siakam's got a good jump shot, but three ball, it's still a work in progress. And then the really weird thing is Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent's numbers from three have gone down pretty significantly this season, and that's gotta hurt. So they're not hitting threes, but they also, I feel like they don't post up enough with Siakam and Barnes because I think they can sometimes get easier baskets than they do. And a lot of times when teams are going to switch everything because they got a lot of wing players, if you can match their wing players and make them play one-on-one, they'll take a bunch of tough shots. And that's kind of what they were doing. You got stagnant, clunky, and just a lot of tough shots for Toronto, and the Clippers were able to get good looks. And a big reason for that is, the Raptors have a conviction where they don't like to play single coverage on the best player in the opposing team. They like to make other guys beat you. And despite OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam's good defense, they double, triple team Kawhi Leonard at times. And I thought Kawhi did such a good job of making the right plays, and I think that his teammates came through for him. 15 points for Kawhi, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, phenomenal defense, a steal and a block, 5 for 12 from the field, good contests on guys like Siakam, on OG Anunoby, various guys. He was 1 for 2 from 3, so slowly but surely, that 3-point percentage is coming together. He's shooting 25.5% from 3 now, which is 12% higher than he was a couple weeks ago, and it's going to slowly start increasing to that over 30% mark as well. And the end of the third quarter was capped off by Norman Powell, who scored the last 11 points of the quarter for the Clippers. And the best part about this performance, the Clippers not only turned the ball over 11 times, so definitely taking care of the ball better, but they held on to the lead. And even though the Raptors made a baby push, the Clippers never let the game get within single digits after taking a big lead. And that is a step up, ladies and gentlemen. And coming up, going to be talking about why Ivica Zubac had so much success in this game and performances from the rest of the bench coming up. On Wednesday, a lot of good games on the schedule, including Orlando Magic and Detroit Pistons. Psych, that's not that great of a game. Lakers and Heat, though, is a great one. And I am going to guess that LeBron James scores over 30 points in the Hawks game. I am going to guess that Hawks Nets. I'm going to guess that Nick Claxton gets 3 blocks or more. And I'm going to guess that Nikola Jokic gets a triple-double in their game against the Kings again. They just played them on Tuesday. That's wild. But where I'm going to do that is Prize Picks. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players and predict that they will score more or less than the Prize Picks projection. You can win up to 25 times your money on any entry, and it's not competing against other people. It's just you and the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. That includes NBA, MLB, NFL, NHL, PGA, college football, men's college ball, whatever you want. And entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. They're safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Just download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign-up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's Take of the Day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Clipper Nation, a good win in this one, 124-113. The Clippers move on to 2-1 in their East Coast road trip, and I am not going to lie, this was one of the games I was a little nervous about the Clippers getting, but they ended up getting it, and they were so solid on both ends of the floor, and one of the guys that was such a huge catalyst to all of that was Ivica Zubac. When you look at the Toronto Raptors starting lineup, they were starting Pascal Siakam at the 5, basically, or like Scotty Barnes as a point center. They started Juancho Hernan-Gomez, who played 9 minutes, a.k.a. Bo Cruz. If you watch the movie, what was that movie called with Adam Sandler and Anthony Edwards? I'm forgetting the name. But he was Bo Cruz in the movie. He played 9 minutes. They have no center. And you could immediately see what Ivica Zubac was doing to them in terms of his rim protection, but also, even though he was fumbling the ball a little bit, and I thought that a couple of times when they blitzed Kawhi, Zoo was getting put in 4-on-3 reads, and I think that there were a couple of times where Raptor players were like stunting at him, like they were going to come collapse and leave a corner shooter open, and he hesitated and almost traveled or fumbled the ball a couple of times. So again, I thought Zubac, even though he had like 9 points and 8 rebounds in the first quarter, I thought he was a little bit weak. I think he was just feasting off his simple size advantage. But the second half, especially that third quarter, he was Zubac again, like we saw against Indiana. Just a beast. He had 10 offensive rebounds in the game. 10 offensive rebounds. And that just really comes from the fact that the Raptors are playing no center. Chris Boucher was the closest they got to a center alongside Thaddeus Young. They played 9 and 10 minutes respectively. Toronto needs to invest in a big. They need to do it. It's the second year in a row. Everybody's so, like, look, I'm going to sit here and tell you, I am all about wing-heavy lineups, wing players. But you cannot win a championship in any era of basketball, definitely not in the past, but even in this non-big man era, you cannot win a championship without having a true center in your rotation at all. It's not possible. I don't know what people think that they can do. They think they switch everything and it's going to be all hunky-dory. You know what the problem is? Teams are going to switch everything on you when they have the personnel to match you. And then it's going to make those wing players all play face-up one-on-one if they've got no post game. And then it just becomes isolation basketball. You want to have a guy that can also take advantage of mismatches or take advantage of smaller guys on the glass to combat switch everything defensive schemes. And Ivica Zubac was all over the place. Rolling to the basket. Taking advantage of his 10 offensive rebounds. Every time he would get the ball, like deep in the paint, 3 Raptors players would all collapse and start swiping down on him like crazy. And as a result, Zoo got 12 free throw attempts. And they were finally calling stuff on Zoo, which I'm very thankful for. And he was 9 for 12 from the line. So, very solid. 75% shooting from Zoo from foul line. 23 points, 16 rebounds overall for him on 7 for 13 shooting. Thought he was really, really good, especially in that second half. He was commanding, and he was really taking advantage of the fact that Toronto had no center. And then when you go to the bench lineups for the Clippers, just so much more size. You know, they went with lineups with Luke Kennard as the smallest guy, alongside like Paul George, Terrence Mann, Nico Batum, and Senior. And again, so much more size. The switching everything works a lot better. It just makes a lot more sense. And I think that Ty Lue's job was made easier by John Wall not playing. And I'm not going to sit here and say the Clippers got to get rid of John Wall. He's not good for the team. They played better without him, which a lot of fans are trying to run with that narrative. And I think it's really disrespectful to a guy that's only given his blood, sweat, and tears so far to this cause. And sometimes fit is fit. Has nothing to do with who's bad at basketball. I think that if you took Norman Powell or Luke Kennard out and you play John Wall, you get similar results where you have less guards, just by subtracting one of them, and you lean into those bigger lineups. And those lineups are working very well. And somebody who I thought had his second straight great game was Reggie Jackson. And again, he stuck to what he knew and didn't try to do too much. 20 points for him. He was the 4th Clipper. 4 Clippers with 20-plus points. That was awesome. Ivica Zubac, Reggie Jackson, Paul George, and Norman Powell, all with 20-plus points. Yes, Kawhi did not. And Reggie was just sticking to the basics. Hit 2 threes out of 6 attempts. Was 9 for 15 from the field, 60%. You got to love that. And I thought that he did a good job of getting into the paint and hitting a couple of floaters. There were a couple of times where Reggie ran pick and roll, and I couldn't tell if Toronto was like blitzing or hedging or dropping. it was kind of like a mixture of a hedge and a drop where like if Scotty Barnes was put in the pick and roll as the guy containing, he was like backing off Reggie Jackson, but not too much where he just stepped into a wide open jumper. Reggie would shoot like a floater going into him. It was almost like a late switch situation. And he had a couple of those. So shout out to Reggie and shout out to the whole supporting cast, including Norman Powell, who led the way, in my opinion, with 22 points. Inspired. And the Clippers win it 124-113. But coming up, going to be finishing talking about the other guys and looking ahead to the Boston Celtics, who might have revenge on their minds after the Clippers gave them a nice whooping in downtown last week. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every pro and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball or soccer. We've got it all on betonline.net. On Wednesday, there's a whole slate of games. The Brooklyn Nets are -6.5 against the Atlanta Hawks, but the way they've been playing, I'd honestly bet on them to win by more than that. The line is -115, or the spread is -115. The line is -255. I would place a bet on the red-hot Brooklyn Nets. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those on BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Just head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right. So to close it out, let's take a look at the box score for the Clippers. 11 turnovers was great. I'm happy they took care of the ball. They shot 48% from the field, 39.5% from three, and 82.6% from the line. So shooting the ball, Clippers did a good job. I thought that they did an even better job for the second straight game of moving the ball well and finding the open man when the defense was in rotation. And even though the Raptors have great closeout speed and length, Clippers just did a good job of moving the ball and finding guys for open shots. Simple as that. Luke Kennard had a rare game where he didn't make a shot. He was 0 for 4 with a donut, but hey, his spacing, his gravity, quote unquote, it helps. It totally helps. Terrence Mann, not happy with the fact that he only got 12 minutes. I think Marcus Morris, who had a decent game, 10 points, 3 for 7 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3. Those two were in the first quarter. I don't think he should be playing that much more than Terrence Mann. Like he's playing 28 minutes. Terrence Mann's playing 12. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I'm not going to nitpick too much when we win. By the way, the Clippers had 15 offensive rebounds to the Raptors 10, and obviously 10 of those were from Ivica Zubac, so shout out to Zoo. But Terrence Mann was still solid, still played a solid 12 minutes, worked hard, got a bucket on a back cut in the fourth quarter, had 2 points on 1 for 2 shooting. I already talked about Norman Powell a ton. Nico Batum started out missing all of his open threes, but the thing about Nico is that's the worst thing he's going to do is miss open threes, because other than that, he's going to do everything else. He's going to guard everybody. He's going to get some steals. He got 1 steal, 1 block in this game. He's going to make the extra pass. And I think my favorite part about Nico, honestly, and there's a lot of things I like about that guy, his timely shots. That shot he made in the left corner from 3 in that fourth quarter, that ended the game effectively. That was it. 3 for 8 from 3 in the game for Nico, and those were all the shots he shot. 9 points and 7 boards in 27 minutes off the bench. He has been so good since that Houston game, and then the Dallas game right after. He has totally turned his season around. He started out really slow. I was starting to say maybe Nico's just washed, maybe he's just old, but oh boy, he is proving me very wrong. And I mean, I wasn't fully buying into that, but it looked like it for a second. But Nico, good old Nico. Overall, for the Clippers, I mean, I think it was a decent game for Kawhi. I think he did what he needed to do. And I think that's the great part about this Clipper team is they don't need Kawhi Leonard to be 30 points per game every night. And maybe in the playoffs they will, but there's a lot of basketball left to be played before that and a lot of good tendencies the Clippers can continue to build. I'm really enjoying covering this team right now. Like, I'm really enjoying, with Kawhi Leonard, seeing the progress game by game. Like, this is what we signed up for. This is what we were told was going to be the vision. This is what I wanted to see. And you can go and pull all your receipts out on me for my oftentimes negative tone at times to start the season. But those were just moments in time. Like, I'm not going to, I don't have a crystal ball to tell you that on December 28th, we'd have Kawhi Leonard back and we'd start rolling. I didn't have that in the beginning of the month. So how am I supposed to be so confident? It's not like we've seen the Clippers win a championship for 4. So when I keep saying everybody deserves to fan differently, people are going to react differently to a season with championship expectations as a Clipper fan because we're not used to this. We're not used to having championship expectations, and we've never actually seen the championship vision pan out for us. So everyone's going to have different approaches in terms of the season's expectations and how they deal with those as fans. And we need to allow people to do that. Now, where I disagree with are 2 things. I disagree with not criticizing the team at all and just sticking by them no matter what, because I think you should stick by them no matter what, but I think that they're not impervious to criticism. They're professionals who oftentimes mess up at their jobs just like you may mess up at yours. I'm not always good at this. I stumble on my words. I sometimes am not organized in my topics. Like, it's not like this has been perfect. Do I upload on time all the time? No. I have my issues. You know what I'm saying? I acknowledge them all. It same goes for basketball players and personnel. But I also think it's terrible to say, trade this guy, this guy sucks after they have 2-3 bad games. Basketball's rhythm. You got to allow people to break out of slumps. These are human beings. The mental side of things is definitely matters in sports. You got to be patient. And I think at times I sounded impatient to start the season. And, you know, if they continue like this, it's all about continuing like this, then I will eventually, and we get a top 3 seed, I will say I was wrong. And right now it's looking like I could be on that trajectory to say I'm wrong, thankfully, because Devin Booker is out for about a month now for Phoenix. And the Suns are right above the Clippers in the standings at that 3 seed, if I'm not mistaken. So it looks like the Clippers can really solidify something here. Actually, no, the Suns are 5th now. So I'm wrong. The Memphis Grizzlies are ahead of the Clippers, and they just got beaten up by the Suns. And then New Orleans is ahead of them. So right now, the Clippers are 2.5 games behind the number 1 seeded Nuggets, who are really starting to catch stride. And I've actually been watching their games recently. But also 4 behind them in the loss column. So honestly, if I'm being real, Clipper Nation, can we catch Denver? Yeah, hypothetically we could. But I don't think it's a big deal if we don't. I think if the Nuggets finish above the Clippers in the regular season, that's okay. Because I said the Nuggets were going to be one of those teams that are going to be in the mix. As long as a team like Memphis or New Orleans, those guys don't finish above the Clippers, that's fine. I honestly think the Clippers should shoot for that 2 seed after Denver. Avoid Denver to the conference finals. Hopefully avoid other big teams. Get that 2 seed. Solidify home court advantage for the first 2 rounds. I'm telling you right now, we get that 2 seed, we're going to the finals. I'm going to say it. I said before the season 60 wins, and obviously I've had to change my expectations there. But I still believe in the top 3 vision, and I believe in the 52-plus win vision. I truly do. I never wavered on that. But I did say famously, if Kawhi and Paul George stay healthy for the rest of the season and we win the championship, that's fantasy land. And you know what? Hey, I'll take my L on that one. I won't forget. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. It's a great time to be a Clipper fan. I also want to say Pascal Siakam still finished with 36 points in that game, but the Clippers held him to 2 for 12 in the first half, and that made a huge difference. He didn't get going the same way. We made life tough on the guy. Scotty Barnes was 8 for 15, 17 points, 12 boards, and 8 assists. Thought he had a really solid game. We took Fred VanVleet out of the game, though, and he didn't look 100%. He was getting blown by, and Norman Powell was really making an effort to get by him and Gary Trent. Fred VanVleet only played 23 minutes, and he had 4 points, and I just heard today that he did not practice on Wednesday, so I'm worried about Fred VanVleet, just from I like Toronto. Not like I'd root for them or anything, but I have some sympathy for them, being the only Canadian team in the league. But anyways, 124-113 is the final score. The Raptors dropped to 15-19. The Clippers move on to 21-15, including 10-8 on the road. The best quarter for the Clippers was their third, with 37-26 outscoring the Raptors. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. And if you aren't subscribed, subscribe to Dime Dropper, where I go live right after games with a raw reaction. Also, subscribe to Locked On Clippers and leave me a review on Apple Podcasts if you'd like. It always helps people get into the show if they're new. I will probably have one guest before the new year. I'm really trying to work on that for you guys. I'm sorry if it's just me all the time. But after games, it's easier when it's just me because, it's hard to coordinate with somebody. But yeah, remember to comment on today's pinned question. Who was your player of the game? You going to go with Zoo, Paul George, Norman? Let me know what you think. Boston's going to be difficult. They're playing better again. They've bounced back. They just beat the Rockets handedly, although that is Houston. And they're going to be coming at the Clippers hard. If the Clippers lose that game, I'm really not tripping. Even before the season, if you had told me at Boston, I'd say that's probably a loss. And that's okay. Let's just see them compete. Let's see them compete. And I'll be back on Friday for another pod. The age-old proverb remains the same. Go Clippers. We doing this.